Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
The Browns linebacker room is interesting, right? If you're looking for a lot of name value, you're not going to find it in this linebacker room. There's not a lot of superstar names here. The one superstar or the one emerging star that they had in JOK is out for the year. And I can easily see how somebody could, from the outside looking in, look at this linebacker room, not be too familiar with some of the names in this linebacker room, and immediately write this linebacker room off. I think that would be a mistake. Potentially for the Browns defense, their front seven, I think, has the potential to be amongst the highest in the NFL. Part of the reason I feel that way is because of the personnel that they have accumulated over the last couple of years. Another part of the reason I feel that way is because of the main people in charge of the Cleveland Browns defense have demonstrated a strong track record of being able to live up to expectation or provide at those position groups on a consistent basis in Jim Schwartz and Jason Tarver. Now, why do I have this belief in those two? Well, if you don't know why I have the belief in Jim Schwartz, just go watch my defensive line review. I talk glowingly about Jim Schwartz's history with his defensive lines over the years, right? Like, Jim Schwartz has done this consistently. You can look up his track record. Defensive line play, good defenses, they tend to follow him, especially as a defensive coordinator. Jason Tarver is somebody who I think you could see his track record right now in Cleveland, just what he's done since he's gotten here, right? He took the job in Cleveland. He arrived with Kevin Stefanski. He's the one coach that they have retained throughout the defensive coordinator switch from Joe Woods to where we are today with Jim Schwartz. And look, we can say a lot about the Cleveland Browns defenses that existed, especially before Jim Schwartz was here when it was Joe Woods. The one thing outside of like maybe 5 weeks, I believe in 2022, where the Browns were so injured at linebacker, they ended up trading for Deion Jones, and then they ended the season pretty good at linebacker. Every year that he's been here, Jason Tarver, we've gone into the season worried about linebacker play because we don't recognize these names. You know, you're bringing in B.J. Goodson, you know, Malcolm Smith, and then you won the Super Bowl MVP. Like, ain't he the random Super Bowl MVP guy from like 2013? We're starting him in 2021, right? Reggie Ragland one year. Y'all remember the Reggie Ragland year, right? Like, we look at these names and we're not very impressed, but then by the end of the season, we're talking about the defense's problems not really being linebacker play. And look, throughout most of that tenure, right, we're talking about 2-3 years here that he's been here out of 5, he's dealt with horrific defensive line personnel decisions, right? And the Browns were terrible interior defensive tackle moves that really affected the linebacker position. And despite all of that, I think the Browns have gotten pretty solid linebacker play out the rooms that they have produced. And I think Jason Tarver has a ton to do with that. So, one, Jason Tarver gonna have a good amount of trust in him as a position coach because he has demonstrated more so than any other coach that's been here since 2020, position coach or coordinator, that he can develop these guys, right? JOK was his project. He developed JOK into what was a top 10 linebacker in all of football until he had that neck injury. So Jason Tarver's track record in developing and raising the ceilings and floors of guys is concrete. We got more out of B.J. Goodson. We got more out of Anthony Walker. We got more out of Devin Bush last year. You name a linebacker that kind of came in with a bit of a sketchy kind of reputation around their name, Jason Tarver was able to make them solid linebackers during their time in Cleveland. So, yeah, you're going to look at this linebacking room and you might not be super impressed with the names that you hear. Some of you know these names, have strong feelings about these names. Some of you may not. But I have really good faith that this room's going to be good because of what we have seen with him. Case in point, right? Devin Bush was on his way out the league last year. Now, I take Pro Football Focus grades with a grain of salt, especially once we start talking about coverage grades and grades involving like things like safeties and corners. I basically disregard it when it comes to secondary players. Linebackers kind of fall in between. But Devin Bush last year was 9th out of 84 eligible linebackers in PFF grade. Top 10, apparently, Devin Bush. Now, I don't think Devin Bush was a top 10 linebacker, but the fact that anybody, any publication can feel comfortable saying that about Devin Bush after the seasons that he put together the last couple of years speaks a lot to how the Cleveland Browns have done with him, right? And that wasn't the only top 10 guy. I mentioned they had JOK, they had number 11, Jordan Hicks. The Browns were able to produce a lot from this linebacking room last year. Now, losing JOK is going to be a big blow to this linebacking room. There's no doubt about it, right? If the Browns had this linebacking room, they added Carson Swissinger, and they had JOK, I'd be sitting here telling you this is going to be the best front seven in football. But that's not the case. JOK's not there, so these things aren't guaranteed in the way that I feel like they had a better chance to be guaranteed. Let's go down the list of guys, right? So you bring in Jerome Baker, veteran linebacker, kind of to add some depth here, right? Like I think he'll be a solid enough rotational linebacker. Then you have Devin Bush, who I believe was the team Sam, basically a Sione Takitaki replacement. And I think in that role, Devin Bush makes a ton of sense, right? Playing along the line of scrimmage, getting a lot of run defense reps in. He was pretty solid in run defense last year. And yeah, I got to give it off to Devin Bush because I did not believe in that project at all. And maybe, hopefully, what I'm hoping is on the offensive side of the ball, Deontay Johnson turns into this year's Devin Bush for me, where I did not believe in Devin Bush until it happened. I thought that was going to be a failure when they brought it in. I was not a believer in the Devin Bush project. I hope the same thing's going on with Deontay Johnson. I don't believe in that project at all, but I hope we have a similar result here. And look, Chad O'Shea has a pretty decent track record with the wide receivers, or at least the veteran wide receivers since he's been here. So he might be able to prove something. And I'd be happy to be proven wrong on this, like I was proven wrong on Devin Bush. Now, again, Devin Bush had an off the field situation this year, so I don't know what his status is going to be with the team coming into training camp, but it doesn't seem like they're planning to move on from him. It's unfortunate that he tainted what was a really good rebound season with getting into some controversy off the field. But if you look at what he's done on the field, 500 snaps last year, he was really productive for this team. Then you have Nathaniel Watson, who I think is intriguing at the very least. Somebody who was really productive in Mississippi State. Didn't really get a great opportunity to play last year, but was decent in the times that we saw him. Then you have Jordan Hicks, another underrated name in this linebacker room, who really, like the Browns bring in a veteran linebacker every year, kind of similar in that same vein of BJ Goodson, Anthony Walker. Right now it's Jordan Hicks, who kind of just holds down the veteran leadership role. Now you got two of those guys there, and Jerome Baker and Jerome Baker and Jordan Hicks. So I'm pretty happy with that pairing. Jordan Hicks is a really good all-around linebacker, solid coverage guy, really good run defender, right? Again, these names aren't going to blow the roof off the marquee. The JOK was the superstar that held this room together, but I think these names are solid enough, especially once you consider that the Browns have invested heavily in their interior defensive line play, which is going to make the linebackers' life a lot easier, that this room's going to be pretty damn good, still in my opinion. I went on a limb on AFC North Talk. Make sure you guys go check that show out when we come back from break in August. But I went out on a limb in AFC North Talk, and I said I think the Browns are going to have the best linebacker room by the end of the season in the AFC North because of not only this strong foundation that they have, right? Devin Bush, really good Sam. Jerome Baker can play that will position. So can Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks can play the mic if you want Carson Swissinger to step in. But getting to the kind of piece that I think is going to take this over the top is Carson Swissinger. Now, Carson Swissinger is not the same type of linebacker that JOK was, right? Like JOK was, how do I define him? JOK was a speeding bullet as a linebacker, right? He was the ultimate see ball, get ball guy. You throw a screen, JOK sniffs it out, he gonna tackle you before the ball even get there, right? JOK was a speeding bullet and hopefully still is a speeding bullet on the football field. That is not what Carson Swissinger is. And I think if JOK can ever get back to form, Carson Swissinger pairs up really well with JOK because Carson Swissinger is really good with his eyes, right? He uses his athleticism to get into the right position, but where he shines is his vision. He has excellent vision as a linebacker, right? He has a great understanding of that, where sometimes JOK, he shoots a gap. He don't care what's in front of him. He not looking for that. He just looking for the ball. That's all he's going to do. And sometimes that costs you problems. And we saw that with JOK at points a couple of years ago. Carson Swissinger is more of that every down in the same kind of vein as like a Fred Warner, where it's not all about playmaking, but because his vision is so good, he has the chance to make a ton of plays. He's a more balanced coverage guy, right? Because of his vision, he's going to be solid in coverage, his athleticism and his length, but also, his vision is going to make him a solid run defender as well. He does need to gain strength, but I don't think that's going to hold him back from being productive in year one, in the same vein that it would if he played like defensive line or something like that. I like Carson Swissinger a lot. I like his fit here. This is one of those picks that Jason Tarver kind of stood on the table for and really wanted to get this guy. You could just tell by how he talks about Carson Swissinger. And getting that guy for your most reliable, dependable, and plus development coach that you have on your staff, I think is a really good idea, because if you just look at what Jason Tarver has been able to develop over the last couple of years, I don't really have a lot of doubt about him being able to get a lot out of Carson Swissinger. He got a lot out of the last guy he picked in JOK. He got a lot out of Jordan Hicks. He got a lot out of Anthony Walker. He got a lot out of BJ Goodson and Reggie Ragland. He got a lot out of Devin Bush. Mahmoud Diabate, undrafted free agent, got more out of him than you could want. And that track record tends to make me feel like he's gonna get a lot out of Carson Swissinger. I feel like it's a safe bet there. Look, the dream of this Browns defense is that Swissinger is able to elevate this linebacker room. Mason Graham or Mike Halling in year 1 or 2 are able to elevate that interior defensive tackle room. And then all of a sudden, you got Myles Garrett, you got an interior defensive lineman star, you got a linebacker star, you got Denzel Ward at the corner position. You just got stars on every single level of this defense. And if the Browns can achieve that, they're going to be one of the better defenses in the NFL. You look at some of the best defenses, you get that trifecta, right? If you have a solid front seven, not just a solid front seven, but multiple playmakers in your front seven, plus a good corner, a great corner in Denzel Ward, and a solid secondary, you're going to be a really good defense. There is a lot of optimism for this Cleveland Browns defense. It's kind of in contrast to the Browns offense, where there's not a lot of optimism. That optimism for this defense is earned, not just because we saw them perform at a high level in 2023, but also because of just looking at the roster in itself. I mean, like, look at the personnel on the defensive line. Look at the investments that the Cleveland Browns have made onto the defense over the last couple of years. The only position I don't think they have sufficiently, really put a lot of resources into is probably the position that matters the least in the Jim Schwartz system, which is the safety position. And even then, they put money towards Grant Delpit, some veterans here and there to play the strong safety position. The post safety spot where they got Ronnie Hickman, not a lot of investment there, but there's reasons for that I'm going to touch on when I review the secondary. So this linebacker room has been invested in. They have some long-term solutions. They have some short-term solutions, right? If I'm reviewing this room, not just based on how I think they're going to perform in 2025, but also how this room is going to be able to encourage long-term sustainable growth for this football team. The defensive line and the linebacker room are the two areas of this team where I'm like, I love the plan, right? You got youth, you got veterans, and you got a couple of guys in between. JOK, like the fact that they lost JOK, who was a top 5 linebacker, in my opinion, last year, one of the best linebackers in all football. I was ready to make the argument he's better than Roquan Smith, which I like to make that argument a lot. Hopefully Carson Swissinger plays well enough to where I'm saying he's better than Roquan Smith, because Roquan Smith is overrated. But nonetheless, that's how good JOK was. And for you to lose somebody like JOK, who was a top 5 linebacker last year, and for me to look at this linebacker room and go, I think they're going to be fine, speaks volumes to the work that they've done in that linebacking room. They spent the 2nd round pick on Carson Swissinger, so they've made a long-term investment. Hopefully JOK comes back in the near future. It's a huge question mark on that. You got your veterans in Jerome Baker and Jordan Hicks. You got your not vets, but not old guys like Devin Bush, right? And Mahmoud Diabate is another guy that you have that can be, at the very least, a solid contributor on special teams and a good depth linebacker for you. You got it on every level. You're in a good position. And even in a disaster situation like they are, where your best player in the linebacking room goes down, I still feel pretty good about this room. If they had JOK, if JOK was healthy, this would be an A+ room. Since JOK is not healthy, I give it a B+. I feel pretty good about this linebacker room from top to bottom, not just because of the players in there, but mainly because of the coach there too. I think Tarver has done a great job with these linebackers. I think his work speaks for itself since 2020. And I think he's going to provide even more examples of why he's one of the better position coaches in all of football, especially when it comes to the linebacker position. But that's just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What would you grade the Browns linebacker room? Everybody have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.